Gatos. We talk a lot about gaming and the state of gaming. And I feel like these smaller devs are freaking showing these larger companies what's up. I'm usually in alignment with Moist Critical on a lot of games, and he just released this video, and I want to see what he has to say. So let's watch this together on the state of gaming.
My fellow gamers, as all of
Hello.
you know, I am one of you. I am an avid enjoyer of gaming. It's been a huge part of my life for my entire life. It's in my veins, it's in my blood, it's embedded deep in my DNA. My
We are
body
gamers.
isn't powered by
We
a
are
heart,
gamers.
it's powered by another graphics card. It's a 4090 in here that's keeping this
Damn,
image
he has a
fresh,
4090
absolute
inside.
online. I'm like Tony Stark.
I'd
but
be interested
nerdier.
to steal it.
Anyway, I feel as though I'm the only one qualified to give you the state of gaming address for 2024.
Okay,
I've
2024.
seen a lot of groaning and moaning, a lot of whining and complaining, a bunch of hoo-wee and hoo-ha and yee-haw about gaming industry is dying. It's this festering wound. It needs a huge change, this and that. And while I agree with some of the sentiment, I actually think there are signs that the industry is going in a better direction.
I
overall.
do believe that.
And I'll explain what I mean, but I want to start with something obvious. A lot of
We
the
had too many good games in 2023.
are just terrible.
We're eating
not
too
even
good.
worth playing. Definitely not worth paying $70 for, such as Suicide Squad and most recently the first quadruple A game according to Ubisoft, Skull and Bones.
Skull and
Suicide
Bones.
Squad has flopped. Its player count has plummeted to under 1,000 players on Steam.
Ooh.
This isn't just one of those like single player
Online
games
community game.
This is one of those things that's supposed to
Only
live on for
1,000
long
players.
time and get people hooked like heroin.
Rip.
But the only thing that got them hooked on was the idea of better games, because that shit is miserable. So that game has been largely a failure, and
That
now
sucks.
Skull and Bones seems to be following suit, which is Ubisoft's latest super stinker, which is a
Of course.
ship combat game without boarding. So
Wait,
it
what?
takes out the most fun part about being a pirate,
Wait, what?
boarding, and reduces
You
it
can't
to just
board?
being a cutscene. Quadruple A my ass. Unless all of those A's stand for different adjectives.
Wait. They had Black Flag as a foundation. All they had to do was take the ship elements of Black Flag and yeah, is that Skull and Bones? Yeah, all they had to do was take the Black Flag elements and port it to its own game and build on it. What the
abominable, awful, abysmal, asinine. Like, it's so stupid to me how this game is out there right now in its beta or
in
whatever
its current
for
state?
$70 when it doesn't even have
$70?
Fucking Assassin's Creed Black Flag a decade
Exactly.
ago has better ship combat and a lot more fun experience of being a pirate. It's crazy. I will not be playing Skull and Bones. I want to make it clear. I've only watched the streamers play it as well as the reviews on it, and I think it is in an inexcusably bad state. This is just blatant garbage that's being put out.
Won't stop them from selling it as a DLC
I don't foresee them ever actually
in a
making
year.
this game good.
Peppo money.
True. We can check
True.
back in on this in 2 years if Skull and Bones happens to be the next biggest game on the planet. That's amazing.
That's the typical Ubisoft way. Just fix it later and make it good
so
later.
Painfully mediocre at best. The best compliment I've seen.
Pete says it's boring because people is comparing it to Black Flag.
Can you imagine that? Paying $70 for mediocrity and doing it with a smile on your face? Because I can't, and you shouldn't accept it either. And this is where I get into the positive news, where a lot of these.
Well, why wouldn't we compare it to Black Flag? Because literally Ubisoft owned Black Flag, and everybody since Black Flag dropped was like, hey, we need a pirate game with all of the pirate aspects of Black Flag. Like, we were literally handing them what we wanted on a platter, and they didn't give it to us. What the hell?
Games have increased their price and decreased their quality. The gap in the market has only widened for people hungry for actually good games.
Yes.
And that gap has been filled by smaller studios making smaller games. So like the $40 price tag games, for example. Those have been dominating 2024. Pal World breaking all of the
Should it be compared to the previous games or Game of Zone? If it's from the same studio, it should be compared.
Blow up.
It
Over
should be compared.
400,000 concurrent players right now for Helldivers 2, and it's
Ooh,
only growing by the day.
Helldivers
And Helldivers
2.
2 is an amazing game. It's full of passion and
Hmm.
fun. I think it's one of the best co-op
That
experiences
one's
I've
been
had
popping
since
off
Lethal
on
Company.
Twitch.
And speaking of Lethal Company, that's another example to what I'm saying. Last year we saw Lethal Company come out and absolutely
One
spank
dev.
the cheeks of the gaming
One
industry. Had
dev
it bent over their knee, disciplining them, showing them how it
made
can be done.
a
If you
very
just make a
fun
fun game. It's a
collaborative
cheap
game.
game made by a single developer, and it took the whole industry by storm for a while, and it's still popular to this day. So we're seeing these games pop up that aren't
Hmm.
blockbusters by any means. They're not $100 million production, fucking 10 years in development hell.
Yep.
You know, these are games made by smaller teams that just deliver unique and fun experiences. And it shows how hungry gamers are for
We
that
do
kind
want
of
good
product.
games.
I've said for a
They just
while,
have
the
to be
future of
fun.
gaming is not in more AAA titles that get more and more expensive to produce and spend more and more time in development.
No,
It's these games, these like AA games coming
it
out
just needs to
that
be
are
fun.
cheaper, a lower price point, and still offering many hours worth
Also,
of
we
fun to
can't
players.
afford
And we're
quadruple
seeing
A
that right now,
games.
and you're
We have to
seeing
buy
how they're being
Crunchyroll,
rewarded with this
Hulu,
level of
Netflix,
success. And I think that is
and
a
everything
great sign
else
for things to
that's
come.
increasing.
I'm hoping this will start to push developers away from just
Thank you
pumping
for the
out
lurk,
this
Liam.
formulaic by the numbers generic garbage like Suicide Squad, trying to capitalize off buzzword genres like
Hype.
live service nonsense, even though there's nothing in there that makes the game actually worth playing. Or
Oof.
most
Rip.
recently with Ubisoft just putting out the most bare bones pirate game ever just to try and capitalize off that as well. I'm hoping companies will start to pay more attention to the success of these $40 games, these smaller games,
Nice.
and shift to that direction. Instead
Yeah.
of spending 5 years developing a pile of mediocre garbage, why not spend a year or so developing something that's much smaller in scale, but tries to do something different that is just a fun game for maybe like 10, 15 hours even. You don't need a game that's going to keep a player hooked for like
For
80 hours plus by
decades.
just delivering more escort missions like Suicide Squad aims to
Yes.
do. You can be satisfied by delivering like a $20 to $40 game that gives a player 15
Exactly.
hours worth of fun and they're done with it by the end. That's totally fine. You get your money's worth, and that makes me excited. Now, granted, the
Yep.
three examples I've given of these massive games that are smaller teams, smaller price, Pal World, Helldivers 2, Lethal Company, those games have tons and tons and tons of hours worth of content in them for you to enjoy. But I still
Yep.
think there's nothing wrong if the industry shifts to making smaller games that are only like 15 hours worth of entertainment, as long as it's a really unique experience and it's fun
Yeah.
to play. I think
Yeah.
you will get your money's worth, and the price point being at that 20 to 40 range. Like the $70 price tag should be reserved for the really meaningful titles, like a GTA 6 style
Yes.
thing. Obviously, that's the most extreme example.
Or a
But when you
Baldur's
see a
Gate, where you're gonna
$70
get
price tag for
hundreds of
something,
hours of
you're expecting the
entertainment out of
highest
it.
level of quality. But right now, when you see $70 or $60, it's you could be getting the worst game of the year. Fucking Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash is a
Hmm.
$60 game right now, and that game is unforgivably awful. And I think it's good news that these AAA
Oh.
developers are not being rewarded for it. Like again, Suicide Squad flopping, Jujutsu Kaisen Curse Clash, the most
Hmm.
refunded game in history, I believe, according to one of the
Oof.
articles I read, which makes sense
Ouch.
because anyone that bought that game actually got scammed. Actually,
Ouch.
just completely full blown blatant scam. So it makes sense everyone would be refunding it. Like and Skull and Bones looking like it's going to be a flop. All of these big budget productions that are being
Yes.
sold for $60 to $70 are not really turning a big profit for these
No, they're
companies.
not.
So I feel like they're going to start to pay a lot more attention to the smaller budget titles and the titles that they can actually do more with, because you won't need to invest years upon years of
Or they're just
development
gonna
time
buy
into
these
it.
smaller
You instead just need to
studios,
invest into a good idea and a
Oof.
passionate team that can
which
deliver
would
something
suck.
fun for a reasonable price. Like it's that simple. And we're seeing this proven time and time again now, more often now than
It
ever.
was a big
So I
move for
actually like the
Helldivers to
direction
come
the
out
gaming
as a
industry is
thirty
going right
dollar
now,
game
because
too.
we're
Really, it's
rewarding
only 30
some of the
bucks.
more unique titles, the more
Oh,
fun titles like the
I might
Helldivers.
have to
Like it's
check it
nice
out.
to see that. Recently, the most popular games haven't been dominated by AAA blockbusters just bullying indie titles or anything. It's actually been the
Or
smaller
maybe
studios,
40.
the
I'll
smaller,
I'll
cheaper
check.
games that
I'll
are
check.
annihilating the big boys on the block. And I just think that's great. So I'm excited to see if this trend continues throughout 2024. It's still very early. We haven't seen the biggest heavy hitters
Okay.
of 2024 come out yet. So I guess that remains to be seen how exactly it's all going to shape up. But I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it put a smile on my face seeing the success of Helldivers today.
It's
Helldivers
hard
was
to
really
tell
like the
when my
catalyst that made me
prices
want
are
to
in
talk
a
about it because I
CAD.
really love
Sorry,
everything
Chunky.
they've done with that game. And I love to see a game like
And
that being
sorry,
rewarded
Twitch
in the
is
way that it is.
increasing your sub
And
price.
I hope we see more things like it throughout the year and just generally in the future of gaming. I really hope we can start getting away from all of these massive $100 million games that just are soulless, just cash grabs,
Rip.
and we get back to having more AA titles out there. I remember in the
Actually,
Xbox
double A is where
360
it's
era,
at.
early in the 360's lifespan, there were so
Sag,
many
I'm
games
used
coming
to
out
it.
from so many different studios that just had all kinds of
I'm
creative
so
ideas that
sorry.
they were just throwing shit at the wall to see what stuck. And sometimes you had some hidden gems, some bangers. But nowadays, in the mainstream gaming space, these giant players only invest heavily into like one or two projects and put all of their eggs in that basket. And most of the time,
Suckage.
it's not turning a profit anymore because the games just aren't really hitting. Like
Nope.
some of them are, of course, obviously, but there's been so many flops recently that you just keep hearing about. It's not sustainable. You can't have every
Yep.
game take 6 years in development and cost nine figures to develop. It's not going to work long term. So I really think the future is back into that $20 to $40 price range on games,
Well, just
smaller in
double A
scale, smaller
studios.
in
Just
scope and
double A
development time,
studios. That's
and
what
you
I think it's
produce
at.
some interesting shit. So I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. That's kind of where I think everything is in the gaming industry right now, and I'm pretty optimistic for the future of it. That's really about it. So yeah,
Like, my thought is that double A studios is where it's at for
good
that
afternoon.
price range or the more economic price range. And I think that if triple A studios want to compete uh, with in terms of quality, they most likely are going to have to turn around and charge us more. And I would not be surprised if GTA 6 is $100 or more. I would not be surprised. But you know that most likely you'll be getting, a really good title for that $100. So, but I agree with Moist. Chunky says it's more of a niche game, though. No one knows about it. Really sad. Can't like it. Oh, okay. Uh, Interesting. So there you have it, Gatos. Moist Critical's State of Gaming. I think he's a Giga Chad, and I tend to agree with this